Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in today. This is the Bodega Cat Book Club Spiritual Edition. And this video is an introduction to a new book that we're going to be starting to read in a couple weeks. So I wanted to do an read the introduction to it. So this book is called the Kybalion. I hope I pronounced that right. Hermetic Philosophy. This book was inspired by a video I saw with Dr. Bruce Lipton. For those of you who are familiar with him, he is a scientist who talks about consciousness and spiritual things and all kinds of stuff. So this video that he did talked about this book, actually the philosophies in this book. So he did a quick introduction of it. I'll leave a link of that video in the description box below so you guys can watch it. I'll also leave a link of a podcaster who did a decode on Dr. Bruce Lipton's video. So you could watch that as well. So I thought this would be a good time to read it, see if we understand it. So Hermetic, before we start, let me just do a little quick plug on what we do. We have book clubs that we put out weekly, and this is the spiritual book club, which is on Mondays. And then we have Wednesdays, we read health books, our health book club, and then Thursdays we have the financial book club. So I'll leave all that in the description box below. You can sign up for any of them, none of them, whatever you want to do, it's fine with me. And we put all the books that we have read in the past, as well as the current ones, on YouTube. So you can check out our YouTube channel. It's the Bodega Cat Healing Center channel. And please, if you feel inspired, like, share, and subscribe, and all those good stuff. Um, we also put our podcast on there as well on the YouTube channel. So we have a podcast that we do. I try to do it pretty regularly. It kind of depends on, the type of, people that universe sends my way. But we have past podcasts on there as well. And if you sign up for our newsletters, you get notification or YouTube, notification of new podcasts that we do, new books that we put, new book clubs that we put out, etc., etc. So make sure that you do that. And on our website, we also have a dedicated tab for our podcast and newsletters. So we have a monthly newsletter that we put out. It's free, so please sign up and follow us and see what we're doing at any given time. Uh, if you have for the book clubs, if you have a book that you want to recommend for us to read, whether it's a spiritual book, a health book, a financial book, just I'll leave a link in the description box below, and you can let us know, and we will read it at our discretion. So we like classic books. I think for me, this is my personal opinion. Classic books have stood the test of time. They are full of wisdom and knowledge. And I think we have to get back to that. Fundamentals, that's what I'm big on fundamentals. So if you find what we do helpful, and you find value in what we do, you can support us by buying me a coffee or check out our merch. We have designs coming out monthly, new designs coming out monthly, especially with the holidays coming up. We got new designs there for both pets, dogs and cats, and humans. So check us out there. You could check the merch out on our website, and I'll leave a link in the description box below as well. And then lastly, if you are in the Los Angeles area, if you're local, or if you're traveling to LA, take some time to come visit us. We have a healing center that we use technologies based on Nikola Tesla's scalar wave research to for holistic healings for both animals, dogs and cats, as well as humans. So you can check out more information on our website. check us out there, and then come join us in person. We love to meet you in person. There is nothing like the energy of in-person relationships. Let's just put it that way. Zoom is great, electronics is great, you know, but it doesn't compare to in-person uh, relationships and in-person energy. So, yeah, so come join us, and we'd love to meet you and get to know you. Okay, so let's begin. This is Kybalion Hermetic Philosophy. And now the author is very interesting. It's the Three Initiates. And this is the centenary edition, which is 100. Wow, that is pretty cool to last 100 years. Okay, so before we begin, I wanted to kind of go through the definition of Hermetic. So I'm just gonna take this out here and put the definition of Hermetic here. So this is from the Merriam-Webster Dictionary. I'm just going to move the camera in a little bit here. Ooh, I hope you guys can see okay. All right, so fundamentals. If you're not sure about something, look it up. That's what I always say. Okay, so the definition of Hermetic. Number one is of or relating to the mystical, right here, or alchemical writings or teachings arising in the first 3 centuries AD and attributed to Hermes Trismegistus, also known as Thoth, Thoth. He was an Egyptian deity, I guess you can call him, who specializes in magic. And if you think about it, magic is not really magic, it's understanding the energy. There is a scene in Thor, the Marvel movie with Thor, with that Australian actor, I don't remember his name now, Chris something or other. But anyways, he had a scene with Jane where he says, uh, I'm paraphrasing, but he's kind of saying that what you call, he's talking to Jane, his future girlfriend, whatever, scientist. He said to her, what you call magic in your world is what we call science in our world. So the concept of magic, one way to look at it, at least, is to understand energy. So people that are shamans, healers, in the past they call them witches, whatever name you want to call them. They are just people who understand the inner workings of energy, how the energy world works, and how to apply that to our physical world. That's all it is. My teacher, Master Choa, talked about that. He was an engineer, and he was also a highly spiritually evolved teacher. So he was able to blend the two together and to come up with a really good set of teachings called pranic healing. And I'll leave a link in the description box below if you want to check out more about pranic healing. Um, and yeah, to understand how the energy world works. Okay, so another definition of Hermetic is relating to or characterized by subjects that are mysterious and difficult to understand, relating to or characterized by occultism or abstruseness. That just means hidden or concealed, from the belief that Hermes just mistress, sorry, I butchered that name. Trismegistus invented a magic seal to keep vessels airtight. So it just means hidden, concealed, difficult to understand. If you look at all the major religions, whether it's Christianity, Catholicism, Buddhism, Judaism, they all have an outer teaching and an inner teaching. So I'll just use Jesus as an example because he's pretty popular and people know him quite well, or at least, very popular. Anyways, if you look at the Bible, he has his disciples, his 12 disciples. And then when he teaches to the masses, to many, many, many people, to the masses, he talks in parables, which is stories, because most of the people that he's talking to are not spiritually evolved, or they're not, they're just to survive, putting food on the table, making enough money for the kids, etc., etc., etc. They really don't have the time or the energy or the inner awareness, if you will, or self-awareness to ask questions about spiritual stuff. And so when Jesus taught them, he spoke in parables or stories with morals. So you hear people say, moral of the story. So the moral of the story is, right? And then with his disciples, who have, taken up Jesus' calling to be a disciple of men, right? Or fisher of men, I think that's the phrase that he used. Those are the inner teachings that he uses, that he teaches them. So in each religion, there's the outer teaching and the inner teaching. Inner teachings are for initiates, people who are spiritually awakened, spiritually aware, and who have the desire to pursue spiritual evolution. Let's just put it that way. Okay, so Hermetic would be part of the inner teachings. So for those of you who are interested in this book, in our book club, you guys are initiates, just from the fact that you have an interest in reading, Hermetics and things like that. So, okay, so the origin of Hermetic. Hermetic has origins in Greek mythology. Hermetic derives from Greek via the medieval Latin word hermeticus. When it first entered English in the early 17th century, Hermetic was associated with writings attributed to Thoth, which is Hermes Trismegistus, the Egyptian god of wisdom. Thoth, whom the Greeks called Hermes Trismegistus, thrice great Hermes. Now, Hermes, if you remember, was the god of messenger. He's the one with the little wings in his Achilles heel, or maybe ankle, or whatever it was, and he was able to fly. Was believed to be the author of a number of mystical, philosophical, and alchemistic works. The obscure subject matter of these works may have made them difficult to wade through, for soon English speakers were also applying Hermetic to things that were beyond ordinary human comprehension. Additionally, Hermes Trismegistus was said to have invented a magic seal that could keep vessels airtight. Hermetic thus came to mean airtight, both literally and figuratively. These days, it can also sometimes mean solitary. If you remember what the Bible says, it says, God says, be still and know that I'm God. You have to be still. You have to, it's an inner work. You do that through meditation, through self-awareness, through, reading, studying, things like that. Those are very solitary activities, where you're tapping into your inner world, your inner divine essence. And you can only do that if you're quiet. You can't have babies crying, dogs barking, music blasting all over the place, watching YouTube. It just doesn't work that way. Okay. All right. So that is what Hermetic means. So let us begin. Like I said, this is the introduction video, and the book is called The Kybalion Hermetic Philosophy. All right. I'm very excited about reading this book. I love things that are ancient. that are old. I think they have a lot of wisdom. Okay, so I'll put a link in the description box below if you want to buy a copy of it. I'll also leave a link of the registration. So we do require that you register. If you don't, that's okay. We put the videos on our YouTube, so you can catch our readings later too if you want. So whatever works for you. There is no one way or right way. There is the path. There is the journey. There is the adventure, right? And there's many different paths to the same destination. Okay, so this is the introduction to the Centenary Edition, which is what this book is, by Richard Smalley. All right, here we go. People grazing in metaphysical bookshops may have wondered about the mysterious volume called the Kybalion, written by, quote, three initiates and first issued by the Publication Society of Chicago in 1908. The best-known edition is a plain volume bound in blue cloth and stamped with gold in a format like those of other books from the same publisher, including various works on yoga by one Swami Ramachakara. The Kybalion claims to be a brief introduction to a mystical tradition that has survived from antiquity. The core of the work is a series of aphorisms, which the author contend go back to the quote, early days and were, quote, passed on from teacher to student, the exact signification and meaning of the terms having been lost for several centuries. And as a side note, it, earlier I talked about outer teaching and inner teaching in major religions. Inner teachings are usually done through verbal instruction, not written. Outer teachings are, you could find a lot of written instruction on the outer teachings, but the inner teachings are, because they are for initiates, for serious students, they are done verbally, verbal instructions. Okay. The word Kybalion, taken at face value, looks vaguely Greek, but it has no meaning in that language. The closest word, the closest word to it in the standard Greek lexicon, curiously, is kabeia, meaning, quote, dice game. It is also tempting to connect this word with the Jewish mystical tradition known as the Kabbalah, especially given that early modern occult texts, such as the 17th century English translation of Cornelius Agrippa's three books of occult philosophy, sometimes use a Hebrew word for Kabbalists, Merkabah, Mecubalim. Sorry, butchered that word. Mukabalim, Mekubalim, Mekubalim, I guess. Okay. But the Kabbalah is never mentioned in the Kybalion. Rather, it presents itself as the essence of the teaching of Hermes Trismegistus. Boy, that's a tongue twister. Thrice greatest Hermes, a legendary semi-divine figure who is said to have brought learning to Egypt in the remotest part. Hermes Trismegistus is often identified with both the Greek god Hermes and the Egyptian god Thoth. The Kybalion is organized to 7 basic principles, which it says form the basis of occult philosophy. And this is the principles that Dr. Bruce Lipton talks about in his video. Number 1, mentalism. The all is mind. The universe is mental. 2, correspondence. As above, so below. As below, so above. 3, vibration. Nothing rests, everything moves, everything vibrates. 4, polarity. Everything is dual. Everything has poles. Everything has its pair of opposites. 5, rhythm. Everything flows out and in. Everything has its tides. All things rise and fall. And just a side note, the rhythm part is similar to the Eastern philosophy of yin and yang, form and essence, right? There's always an ebb and flow between form and essence. It's like a dance. Life is like a dance, right? Number 6, cause and effect. Every cause has its effect. Every effect has its cause. Everything happens according to law. Another side note, this is just another word for karma. Whatever you put out, whether it's positive or negative, there is a boomerang effect. It might not come back in this lifetime, but eventually you'll have to pay the piper. So all the bad things that people do today, and whether they're politicians and bankers and whatever, they will have to pay their due in due time. And that's up to the universe, up to their higher soul, when and where and how they're going to do it. So, yes, we have to do our duty to, yes, we have to do our duty. We have a responsibility to keep them in check, to educate ourselves, to make them accountable. But karma will come back and bite them in the butt for what they've done. And that goes for positive stuff. So the more positive things that you put out, it will come back to you. I think the Bible says sevenfolds or tenfolds. I don't remember now, or 7 times 7, or whatever the Bible says. I'm paraphrasing. I don't remember offhand. So, anyways, I just want to mention that about cause and effect. Number 7, gender. Gender is in everything. Everything has its masculine and principle and feminine principles. Gender manifests on all planes. Now that is very interesting, given what's going on with the transhumanism, trans community. It'll be interesting to read about that, that's for sure. Okay, the origins of this book have mystified many. Scholar Philip Deslippe argues, convincingly, I believe, that it was written by William Walker Atkinson, who operated the Yogi Publication Society in Chicago. He's also thought to be, quote, Swami Ramachakara. As the first principle, mentalism suggests the ideas of the Kybalion bear some resemblance to New Thought, a movement to which Atkinson was closely connected. The universe, the Kybalion tells us, is contained in, quote, the mind of the all. The all creates the universe mentally in a manner akin to the process whereby man creates mental images. This idea is central to practicality. Oh, sorry. This idea is central to practically all New Thought teachings. Just another side note, the all that they talk about here, also known as God, the creator of all things. Who was that? Alex, there was this Alex, not Trebek. Alex something, I forgot his last name right now, but he was the uh what do you call it? The extraterrestrial connect that got abducted into the spaceship. Oh gosh, I'm bad with names. Anyways, the Andromedans he said the Andromedans call God isness, isness, right? Which is very interesting, isness. So the all creates the universe mentally. So that is what the all is referring to. God, the creator, the universe, you could put whatever name you want in it, but it's the prime mover, right? I think that's what Aristotle says, or one of those old philosophers, or Plato. I don't remember now. It's been a while since I've read my philosophy. But anyways, okay. I just wanted to say that. All right, onward. Nevertheless, the book does echo a more remote past. The term the all, for example, resembles the Greek to pan, which also means the all, and which appears in some Hermetic maxims, most famously, hen to pan. I'm sorry I didn't pronounce that right because I don't speak Greek. All is one. Given the claims made for it, the most obvious source to examine for the roots of the Kybalion is the Corpus Hermeticum, or Hermetic body of texts. These were composed probably in the early centuries CE and purport to expound the wisdom of Egypt as narrated in a series of discourses and dialogues, including Hermes and his son Tat, a version of Thoth. And indeed, there are intriguing resemblances between these works and the Kybalion. The first text in the Corpus Hermeticum, the Poimandres, probably a Greek adaptation of the Egypt P-M-E-N-Re, or mind of authority, tells us that the source of the universe was nous, consciousness or mind, much as the Kybalion asserts the principle of mentalism. Moreover, this divine mind is described as, quote, being androgyny and existing as light and life, which parallels the concept of gender as set out in the Kybalion. So one way to think of God is through the concept of light or energy, right? God is energy, God is light, God is love. Love is a frequency. So there's many different ways, many different aspects of God that we can learn to come to understand God. The Christian principle uh, of God is very form, in my opinion, very form driven. It's not essence driven. So for the inner teachings, you come to understand, well, this is my opinion. God is meant to be experienced, not philosophized or debated or argued about or dogmatized. That's just the way I see it. So maybe that's why I turned off when people start preaching at me. But anyways, I think God is meant to be experienced because his energy is transformative, should be transformative in your life, right? Okay. All right. The Kybalion also speaks of the principle of correspondence. This idea appears in another ancient Hermetic text, the extremely brief and elliptical Emerald Tablet, which says in Latin, oh my goodness, here we go. And I apologize in advance because I don't speak Latin, although it is one of my favorite languages. Quod est superius est sicut quod est inferius, et quod est inferius est sicut quod est superius. Ad perpetranda miracula re unius. Oh, I butchered that really bad. I am so sorry. But the English version is translated as what is above is like what is below, and what is below is like what is above, to enact the wonders of the one thing. The one thing being the creator, being God, being the universe, the great architect. The Emerald Tablet is said to have originally been written in Syriac, a Semitic language spoken in the Eastern Mediterranean world in antiquity, but it survives only in somewhat dissimilar translations in Latin and Arabic. Whether there really was a collection of aphorisms known as the Kybalion and passed down from master to pupil from the days of antiquity is hard to say. There are, to my knowledge, no copies of it or any references to it that predate the 1908 edition, but that does not mean there were none. And there are claims of similarity hidden texts in other traditions. The Russian esotericist Boris uh, Moraviev claim that esoteric Christianity has an unpublished set of aphorisms called the Golden Book, some of which he quotes in his three-volume work Gnosis, Study and Commentaries on the Esoteric Tradition of Eastern Orthodoxy, although these do not resemble the maxims of the Kybalion to any degree. As for the author, William Walker Atkinson, 1862 to 1932, was born in Baltimore, Maryland. After an abortive career as a lawyer, he moved to Chicago with his family in 1900 and lived there for most of the rest of his life. He began writing books and articles in the vein of New Thought, a movement that stresses the power of the mind in creating reality. His first book, Thought Force, was published in 1901. Most of Atkinson's books were published uh, nom, pseudonymously. Ugh. Pseudonymously. Oh, sorry, butchered that word. Okay, in 1903, he began writing under the name, quote, Yogi Ramachakara. And in 1908, the Kybalion appeared, ascribed to, quote, the three initiates. The publisher was Atkinson's own Chicago-based Yogi Publication Society. The identity of these, quote, three initiates has long been a puzzle. Many candidates have been named, notably the occultist Paul Foster Case, founder of the society known as Builders of the Adytum. But as Philip Deslippi's research has shown, the book almost certainly has had a single author, and that was Atkinson. Indeed, in 1917, for a French edition, the translator identified the author as, oh boy, here comes the French now, Le Maître Séquiste Américain, W. W. Atkinson. Okay. Boy, I'm really testing. This book is testing my Greek and Latin and French languages that I don't speak at all. Okay. The Kybalion quotes a number of sources from Atkinson's Atkinson's time. Thomas Thomson J. Hudson's 1893 work, The Law of Psychic Phenomena, Rama Prasada's 1890 title, The Science of Breath and Philosophy of the Tattvas, as well as philosophers William James and Herbert Spencer. But its chief source probably lay elsewhere. In 2009, in a 2009 blog posting, tarot scholar Mary K. Greer suggests a plausible source for the Kybalion. In 1885, Anna Kingsford, an Englishwoman who founded an organization called the Hermetic Society, published a book titled The Virgin of the World of Hermes Mercurius Trismegistus, which contained an adaptation of the Hermetic text. As Greer points out, this book, especially its introduction, written by Kingsford's associate Edward Maitland, offers parallels for the Kybalion's 7 principles. Number 1, mentalism. Maitland asserts that consciousness is, quote, the indispensable condition of existence, end quote, emphasis Maitland's. Matter is itself a, quote, mode of consciousness. Matter is itself merely, quote, a mode of consciousness. Number 2, correspondence. Maitland writes, quote, from the oneness of original being comes as a corollary the law of correspondence between all planes or spheres of existence, in virtue of which the macrocosm is as the microcosm, the universal as the individual, the world as man, and man as God. Number 3, vibration. The Kybalion formulates this principle thus, quote, nothing rests, everything moves, everything vibrates, end quote. This idea echoes a passage in one of the Hermetic texts, number 10. Quote, there is nothing immutable, nothing stable, nothing unchanging in nature, either in the heavens or the earth. Hence the proverb or the phrase, change is constant, right? You hear that all the time. Number 4, polarity. Maitland writes, quote, all being modes of the one, no inherent antagonism or essential difference is possible. Total unconsciousness is not being and bears to consciousness the relation of darkness to light, the latter alone of the two being, however reduced, positive entity, and darkness being non-entity. Number 5, rhythm. The Corpus Hermeticum 14 reads, quote, order maintains the fabric of things established by destiny and necessity. For all this is an everlasting sequence without beginning or end. It rises and falls alternately, and as time rolls onward, that which has disappeared again rises uppermost. Number 6, cause and effect. Maitland refers to, quote, that inexorable law of cause and effect in things moral, in virtue of which man's nature and conditions in the future are the result of the tendencies voluntarily encouraged by him in the past and present, end quote. Number 7, gender. Maitland writes, quote, so far from repudiating the relations of the sexes, the Hermetic doctrine exalts them as symbolizing the loftiest divine mysteries and enjoins their exercise as a duty, the fulfillment of which, in some at least of his incarnations, is essential to the full perfectionment and initiation of the individual, end quote. Given these resemblances, along with the Kybalion's insistence that it contains the essence of Hermetic teaching, it is very likely that Kingsford and Maitland's work was the main source for the Kybalion. But these examples also show that Atkinson was not plagiarizing the Virgin of the World. Rather, he was attempting to distill its most important principles into his own words. The style and content of the Kybalion echo those of Atkinson's other works. Here, for example, is the Kybalion. The Hermetic teachings are that not only is everything in constant movement and vibration, but that the, quote, differences between the various manifestations of the universal power are due entirely to the varying rate and mode of vibrations. Modern science has proven that all that we call matter and energy are but modes of vibratory motion. Compare this to an excerpt from a booklet entitled Practical Mental Influence and Mental Fascination, published under Atkinson's own name. Physical science teaches that underlying all forms, degrees, and apparent differences, there is to be found a manifestation of some elementary energy which manifests in what is known as vibrations. Everything in the material world is in vibration, ever manifesting a higher degree of motion. Without vibrations, there would be no such thing as a material universe. In fact, a physical science itself teaches that not only is vibration the basic force underlying other forces and the various forms of matter, but also that the apparent differences between the various forms of matter and also the various forms of energy are caused simply and solely by the varying degrees of vibration manifested. Another example, here is the Kybalion. All the phenomenal world or universe is simply a mental creation of the all, subject to the laws of created things, and that the universe as a whole and in its parts and units has its existence in the mind of the all, in which mind we, quote, live and move and have our being. CF, I don't know what that means. Okay, so that looks like it's from the Bible, right? Acts chapter 20, chapter 17, verse 28. Here is a similar passage from Lessons in Gnani Yoga by Atkinson, writing as Yogi Kamachakara. This indeed is the highest conception of thought in the yogi teachings. This, that all manifestation and emanations of the Absolute are mental creations of the Absolute. thought forms held in the infinite mind and the infinite spirit in them, and they in the infinite spirit. But we're left with this question: why are the pseudonymous authors said to be three initiates? Was Atkinson collaborating with anyone else? If we go by the hypothesis that I have sketched out above, the answer becomes apparent. Atkinson wrote the book by himself, but he wanted to acknowledge his debt to Kingsford and Maitland. They were the other two initiates. He's not saying that they helped to write the book, which they did not do. Both of them had died by the turn of this 20th century, Kingsford in 1888, Maitland in 1897. Atkinson is simply paying homage to them by including them in the anonymous trinity of authors. Thus, it is possible to trace out a lineage for the Kybalion. The original Hermetic texts, which have been known in the Western world since the 15th century and which have existed in English versions since at least the 17th, and the digest of these texts was presented by Kingsford and Maitland in Victorian London. In this sense, the aphorisms, the Kybalion, are very likely a pious fraud. Certainly, their style and mode of thought are more evocative of 20th century America than they are of ancient Egypt or Renaissance Europe. Even so, it would be a mistake, I think, to conclude that this work is unfaithful to the tradition it lays claim to. A spiritual tradition is based certainly on timeless and unchanging truths, but the application to which these truths are put will vary from age to age in accordance with that age's need. In this sense, the Kybalion is a genuine link in the Hermetic chain. The Kybalion has been a central text for 20th century American occultism and spirituality. This book has been held in Rosicrucian and Hermetic circles and in the realm of New Thought. Florence Scofield Shinn, a popular New Thought author of the early 20th century, identified her positive thinking philosophy with the ideas of the Kybalion. Shinn herself went on to influence probably the best known advocate of positive thinking in the 20th century, Norman Vincent Peale. In the 21st century, the Kybalion's ideas of vibration, frequency, mental alchemy, and the law of attraction were incorporated into Rhonda Byrne's 2006 bestseller, The Secret. Given all this, how do the ideas in the Kybalion relate to traditional esoteric teaching? The most striking thing about the Kybalion is its terminology: vibration, rhythm, polarity, causation. All of these point to a scientific or a quasi-scientific mode of thought. This fits the book perfectly into its context. The early 20th century, when science had established itself as the new plus ultra of human knowledge, to be taken seriously, thinkers felt the need to frame their ideas in quasi-scientific terms and invoke the hard physical sciences in support of them. We have already seen examples in the passages quoted above on vibration, which cite, quote, modern science and, quote, physical science as authorities. Our own time has its updated version of this. Metaphysical writers invoke quantum physics and relativity, often in garbled and almost unrecognizable forms in much the same way. This practice is legitimate, or at any rate understandable. One naturally wishes to frame ancient and presumably eternal ideas in the terms that will make the most sense to one's contemporaries. But it has created a little noticed effect. Scientific terms and concepts as framed today characterize the entities they discussed as impersonal and inanimate. They are forces, not living beings. In the 6th century BCE, Thales of Miletus, sorry, butchered that name, the first thinker to explore the universe in a way that might be called scientific, insisted that, quote, all things are full of gods, end quote. No scientist would dare make such a statement today, even if he believed it. The Kybalion then is part of a long-range trend in Western esoteric thought to move from a world of the personal, from spirits, angels, demons, fairies, into the impersonal, vibration, polarity, causation. Some may automatically see this process as an advance or evolution of thought. I myself am not so sure. I do not believe so categorically either in the personal nature or in the impersonality of the forces that are being explored here. Rather, I would imagine these forces could look personal, viewed from one angle, and impersonal from another, the totality being something larger than our minds are likely to be able to apprehend. Hence, there is a major difference between the original Hermetic teachings and the new thought flavored doctrines of the Kybalion. The corpus hermeticum did not exist in a philosophical vacuum. Its highly elevated and abstruse dialogues form only a part of the ancient Hermetic literature. Most or much of the rest consists of magical texts, and scholars have become increasingly aware that these cannot be so easily divorced in content or inspiration from the more theoretical Hermetic writings. In short, the ancient Hermetists probably did not use a type of new thought like mind power in their practice. Rather, they probably made use of such things as magical rituals, divination, and invocation of the gods, just as we see in most forms of ancient religion. The use of mind power, as we find it in New Thought, seems to be very much an invocation of the 19th century, notably of the New England healer Phineas P. Quimby and his spiritual descendants, including Mary Baker Eddy, founder of Christian Science. We now face the biggest and most difficult question of all. What value do the teachings of the Kybalion have? Are they true? There are many testimonials to the effects of thought power on events in the physical world, but then there are also countless cases, many of which we never hear about, in which these ideas simply did not work or did not work as expected. To speak personally, again, I would endorse the basic idea of mind power. Indeed, there are levels of mind at which to think something is to make it happen. Nonetheless, the levels of mind that possess this creative power are surrounded by heavy defenses in the psyche. For most people, they are inaccessible. You can force your way through these barricades with certain techniques and certain drugs. This may be what the traditional occult literature calls the confrontation with the dweller on the threshold. This term, used in Edward Bulwer Lytton's classic occult novel, Zanoni, 1842, refers essentially to the psychic barrier between the conscious and unconscious mind. But unless you are extremely well trained and well prepared, and probably even then, this attempt is likely to distort and injure the mind rather than enlightening it. All this is as it should be. Do you really want the power to think something and instantly make it happen? Do you have the will and self-mastery that would require? In any case, I believe that thought power in its ultimate form both offers more power and presents more risks than many people would believe. As for the simpler and easier and less effective forms of thought power, positive suggestion and so on, I believe they also work, although in less dramatic ways. Certainly, it is better to be saying kind and sharing things to yourself than harmful and destructive ones. But I also believe there are limits to this practice. The subconscious knows when it is being lied to. As for the Kybalion specific teachings, my own opinion is that they are true, but it is not easy to grasp the essential connection from the term it presents. Take the idea that the universe is entirely mental in nature. On the surface, this idea appears to be false. On the surface, it seems that there are at least two distinct types of events. Mental events take place in one's mind. They're not publicly accessible, not at any way without some type of communication. We normally distinguish between these and physical events, which are for the most part publicly accessible. If you and I are in the same room, oops, if you and I are in the same room, there is a green lamp on the table, we will both see it. But as I have said in my book, The Dice Game of Shiva, How Consciousness Creates the Universe, there is more truth to the idea of mentalism than there may seem to be. We can understand it more clearly if we take the following viewpoint. That is, there is that which experiences and that which is experienced. The former has many names in the world's traditions: the self, Atman, Purusha, the true I, Buddha nature, spirit. It is pure cognition. It has no contents of its own. Then there is that which is experienced, both physical and mental. It is variously known as prakti. Oops, sorry. Okay. Then there is that which is experienced. This includes the sum total of all experience, both physical and mental. It is variously known as prakti, quote, the world, as in the Gospels, and even, quote, matter. But it is not matter as conventionally understood. It is simply that which is perceived in all forms. In this sense, a rock is matter, but so is the image of a rock in your mind. Prakti is constantly changing, constantly moving, constantly altering. Hence, the Kybalion can tell us, quote, nothing rests, everything moves, everything vibrates, end quote. In ordinary human consciousness, that which experiences is entangled with that which is experienced. We believe we are what we experience. We believe we are the thought and emotions that pass through the mind. We become what we behold. It can be difficult to detach the two, but I believe that this is precisely the goal of many forms of meditation. The self, as pure witness, watches all phenomena, mental and physical, inner and outer, pleasant and unpleasant, as images passing across the screen of the mind. In this sense, we can say that, quote, all is mental. Notice also that the interaction between self and phenomena can itself vary. Self can identify with the contents of its experience, or it can detach itself from them. It seems likely to me that neither of these stances is absolute, and indeed they can alternate or appear to alternate rapidly in many cases. Self identifies with its contents, then it detaches itself from them. Let us go further and posit that this process takes place at all levels of manifestation, from that of the subatomic particle to the atom to our own level and beyond. It is, in my view, entirely legitimate to speak of the consciousness of the atom. If we posit some kind of process whereby this goes on constantly and, shall we say, habitually, we now see the source of the quote vibration that the Kybalion describes, and which, as it points out, is the standard feature of the universe. Because this process takes place at all levels and scales of reality, we also see the source of the correspondence among all levels that the Kybalion asserts. In fact, these considerations help explain all the basic principles of the Kybalion. In addition to the ones I've just mentioned, we have polarity. This is the polarity between self and the world, between that which experiences and that which is experienced. Gender, self and other, that which experiences and that which is experienced, correspond to the masculine and feminine, respectively. Rhythm, the perpetual alternation between identification and attachment, between self and other, again at all levels, generates the rhythm of the universe. Cause and effect. What we observe as cause and effect is simply the operation and outcome of these processes. In any event, even these few brief points can help us see the depth and fertility of the ideas in the Kybalion. They also help us see that these ideas are not merely an arbitrary string of axioms, but expressions of certain basic principles that, once understood, illumine them all. Winfield, Illinois, November 2016. Ah, very interesting. Okay, so here are some sources. I will pause. I won't read them, but I will pause. And you could take screenshots if you want. um, or take notes. Pause and take notes if you want to read further. I'll just kind of stop for a few seconds so you guys can see. Interesting intro, eh? Okay, it's a lot of sources. That's great. Okay. Lots of good books for your library, eh? Okay. Now, there is a short introduction. This would be the introduction to the book. So we will read that and we will call it a day. All right, introduction. We take great pleasure in presenting to the attention of students and investigators of the secret doctrines this little book based upon the world-old Hermetic teachings. There has been so little written upon this subject, notwithstanding the countless references to the teachings in the many works upon occultism, that the many earnest searchers after the arcane truths will doubtless become the appearance of the present volume. I'm just going to take a drink of my tea here real quick before we continue. All right. The purpose of this work is not the enunciation of any special philosophy or doctrine, but rather is to give to the students a statement of the truth that will serve to reconcile the many bits of occult knowledge that they may have acquired, but which are apparently opposed to each other and which often serve to discourage and disgust the beginner in the study. Our intent is not to erect a new temple of knowledge, but rather to place in the hands of the student a master key with which he may open the many inner doors in the temple of mystery through the main portals he has already entered. There is no portion of the occult teachings possessed by the world, which have been so closely guarded as the fragments of the Hermetic teachings, which have come down to us over the tens of centuries which have elapsed since the lifetime of its great founder, Hermes Trismegistus, the scribe of the gods, who dwelt in old Egypt in the days when the present race of men was in its infancy, contemporary with Abraham, and if the legends be true, an instructor of that venerable sage, Hermes was and is the great central sun of occultism, whose rays have served to illumine the countless teachings which have been promulgated since his time. All the fundamental and basic teachings embedded in the esoteric teachings of every race may be traced back to Hermes. Even the most ancient teachings of India undoubtedly have their roots in the original Hermetic teachings. From the land of the Ganges, many advanced occultists wandered to the land of Egypt and sat at the feet of the master. From him, they obtained the master key, which explained and reconciled their divergent views, and thus the secret doctrine was firmly established. From other lands also came the learned ones, all of whom regarded Hermes as the master of masters. And his influence was so great that, in spite of the many wanderings from the path on the part of the centuries of teachers in these different lands, there may still be found a certain basic resemblance and correspondence which underlies the many and often quite divergent theories entertained and taught by the occultists of these different lands today. The student of comparative religions will be able to perceive the influence of the Hermetic teachings in every religion, worthy of the name now known to man, whether it be a dead religion or one in full vigor in our own times. There is always a certain correspondence in spite of the contradictory features, and the Hermetic teachings act as the great reconciler. The life work of Hermes seems to have been in the direction of planting the great seed truth, which has grown and blossomed in so many strange forms, rather than to establish a school of philosophy which would dominate the world's thought. But nevertheless, the original truths taught by him have been kept intact in their original purity by a few men in each age, who, refusing great numbers of half-developed students and followers, followed the Hermetic custom and reserved their truth for the few who were ready to comprehend and master it. From lip to ear, the truth has been handed down among the few. There have always been a few initiates in each generation in the various lands of the earth who kept alive the sacred flame of the Hermetic teachings. And such have always been willing to use their lamps to relight the lesser lamps of the outside world when the light of truth grew dim and clouded by reason of neglect, and when the wicks became clogged with foreign matter. There were always a few to tend faithfully the altar of the truth, upon which was kept alight the perpetual lamp of wisdom. These men devoted their lives to the labor of love, which the poet has so well stated in his lines. Oh, let not the flame die out, cherished age after age in its dark cavern, in its holy temples cherished, fed by pure ministers of love, let not the flame die out. These men have never sought popular approval, nor numbers of followers. They are indifferent to these things, for they know how few there are in each generation who are ready for the truth and who would recognize it if it were presented to them. They reserve the quote strong meat for men, while others furnish the quote milk for babies. They reserve their pearls of wisdom for the few elect, who recognize their value and who wear them in their crowns, instead of casting them before the materialistic vulgar swine, who would trample them in the mud and mix them with their disgusting mental food. But still, these men have never forgotten or overlooked the original teachings of Hermes regarding the passing on of the words of truth to those who are ready to receive it, which teaching is stated in the Kybalion as follows, quote, where fall the footsteps of the master, the ears of those ready for his teaching open wide. And again, quote, when the ears of the students are ready to hear, then cometh the lips to fill them with wisdom. But their customary attitude has always been strictly in accordance with the other Hermetic aphorism, also in the Kybalion. Quote, the lips of wisdom are closed, except to the ears of understanding, end quote. There are those who have criticized this attitude of the Hermetists and who have claimed that they did not manifest the proper spirit in their policy of seclusion and reticence. But the moment's glance back over the pages of history will show the wisdom of the masters who knew the folly of attempting to teach to the world that which was neither ready or willing to receive. The Hermetists have never sought to be martyrs and have instead sat silently aside with a pitying smile on their closed lips while the quote heathen raged noisily about them in their customary amusement of putting to death and torture the honest but misguided enthusiasts who imagined that they could force upon a race of barbarians the truth capable of being understood only by the elect who had advanced along the path. And the spirit of persecution has not as yet died out in the land. There are certain Hermetic teachings which, if publicly promulgated, would bring down upon the teachers a great cry of scorn and revilement from the multitude, who would again raise the cry of crucify, crucify. In this little work, we have endeavored to give you an idea of the fundamental teachings of the Kybalion, striving to give you the working principles, leaving you to apply them yourselves rather than attempting to work out the teaching in detail. If you are a true student, you will be able to work out and apply these principles. If not, then you must develop yourself into one, for otherwise the Hermetic teachings will be as, quote, words, 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 words to you. 3 initiates. Wow. Very interesting. Wow, I'm certainly looking forward to reading this book. It's going to be a mind twister. And I really think the mental part is very true. And, you know, you hear a lot about um, the geopolitical climate now. You hear about, oh, it's a battle of good and evil, battle of for our spirit. It really is about the battle of the mind when you come to think about it. Because if you stuff your mind with negative images, toxic things, that's gonna affect your emotion. That's gonna affect your physical body. That's gonna affect your spiritual um, life. So, you know, they talk about you are what you eat. Um, in a way, you are what you think. You are what you put into your thoughts. So I think it's very important to be careful, I think. Guard guard your mind very carefully, right? Okay, well, I will leave the registration link if you guys want to join us live. If not, we will see you on YouTube or wherever we see you. Um, leave your thoughts, leave your comments. We'd love to hear from you and see what you think. And thank you again for being on this journey with us. All right, in the meantime, I hope you guys all have a great day, a great evening, great afternoon, wherever you are, a great week. We'll see you next time. All right, bye bye now.